Is it elder abuse or dedication? That's the debate raging across social media right now after viral videos showed a 90-year-old legend struggling through a performance while pristine vocals played from speakers overhead. And he's not alone. Right now, 15 iconic singers are facing health crises that would have ended anyone else's career. 4 strokes, fractured larynxes, brain conditions, progressive blindness, yet they keep taking the stage. Tonight we're counting them down from 15 to 1, and what you discover about why they won't stop might be the most uncomfortable truth in music history. Because sometimes the real question isn't whether they should retire, it's who benefits most from keeping them on stage. Number 15, Roger Daltrey. Going blind, going deaf, but still refusing to quit.
You look awful cold.
Roger Daltrey stood before a Royal Albert Hall crowd in March 2025 and said something that should have ended the conversation right there. At 81 years old, the legendary Who frontman announced he has incurable macular degeneration and admitted he's going blind. If that weren't enough, he's also dealing with severe hearing loss that dates back to his teenage years working in a sheet metal factory before the Who even existed. His internal temperature regulation is shot thanks to viral meningitis he caught in 2015, leaving him drenched in sweat during warm venue performances. And most symbolically, he's retired his famous scream, that iconic climax from Won't Get Fooled Again, that defined an entire era. He told audiences during his 2024 solo tour that he'd wrecked his voice so many times doing it that he simply can't anymore. The Who launched their Song Is Over farewell tour in August 2025, but 2 consecutive shows in Philadelphia and Atlantic City got postponed immediately due to illness. Daltrey admitted to reporters he's genuinely nervous about making it to the end of the tour. Acknowledging the potential to get really ill is absolutely there. Yet reviews of the shows he has completed describe something remarkable. Critics say his pipes are still premium, that he's somehow delivering stunning performances despite everything. If this really is the Who's final bow, then watching Daltrey fight through blindness and deafness to deliver one more show feels less like a victory lap and more like watching someone test the absolute limits of what a human body can endure on stage. If a blind deaf singer can still somehow hit the notes, then what happens when even that's not enough anymore? Number 14, Paul Simon. 6% hearing in emergency back surgery.
Want to talk with you again.
Paul Simon retired from touring in 2018 after losing hearing in his left ear. And for most artists, that would have been the end of the story. But at 83, Simon came back anyway in 2025 for his Quiet Celebration tour. And what fans discovered was both inspiring and heartbreaking. Simon has only 6% hearing remaining in his left ear, a condition that began around 2021 and that doctors still can't explain. The hearing loss forced him to eliminate every Louder song from his catalog, including the crowd favorite Everyone Wants to Hear. He can't perform it anymore because if there's a drum or electric guitar, it's too loud and he can't hear his own voice. The tour hit a crisis on June 28, 2025, when Simon abruptly canceled 2 Philadelphia shows just hours before showtime due to chronic and intense back pain that became unmanageable and demanded immediate attention. He underwent surgery 5 days later. Despite these physical battles, critics who've seen the shows call them triumphant, noting that the fragility in Simon's aging voice actually deepens the experience rather than diminishing it. Simon's working with Stanford researchers studying hearing regeneration in zebrafish and mice, hoping science might restore what's been lost. His 21-date European tour is scheduled for April through May 2026, which means he'll be touring with 6% hearing in one ear, a surgically repaired back, and nothing but hope that his body holds together long enough to finish what he started. But that wasn't the whole story about aging singers and their hearing problems. Number 13, Bob Dylan. 57 shows scheduled while fans walk out mid-performance.
A lover for your life and nothing more.
Bob Dylan is 83 years old and has 57 shows scheduled for 20, 25, plus 27 more, announced for 2026, yet concert reviews swing so wildly, you'd think people were describing completely different performers. At a November 2024 Bournemouth show, an attendee observed Dylan looking very wobbly, staggering somewhat alarmingly with one hand often gripping the side of his baby grand piano as he moved around. But the real division comes from what people hear. Rolling Stone declared that after a 4-month break, Dylan's voice showed no trace of the garbled tone that plagued past shows, and had been replaced by a soothing purr. Another critic called his delivery of certain songs sublime and transformative. Then you read the other reviews. A Nottingham attendee wrote it was honestly the worst concert they'd ever been to, calling it absolute rubbish. A Fort Lauderdale fan described it as a nightmare where half the theater walked out mid-show, adding that as far as they're concerned, the real Bob Dylan doesn't exist anymore. Dylan uses strict phone bans with yonder pouches, ejecting anyone who violates the rule, and his setlist hasn't changed significantly in 5 years. Ticket prices remain premium despite the polarizing experience. Back in 2009, Dylan told critics there's no such thing as forever, that anybody with a trade can work as long as they want, a carpenter, an electrician, and they don't necessarily need to retire. He's lived that philosophy right into his mid-80s, playing to some audiences who call it transcendent and others who leave wondering what they just paid to witness. If half a theater walks out while the other half calls it genius, then who's actually right about whether Dylan should still be performing? Number 12, Vince Neil, 4 Strokes and the videos that went viral for all the wrong reasons.
Are you feeling good?
Vince Neil of Mötley Crüe revealed in September 2025 something that should have permanently ended his time on stage. The 64-year-old admitted he suffered 4 strokes, including a major one on Christmas night 2024 that left his entire left side paralyzed. He had to learn to walk again, something doctors told him was so serious they didn't think he'd ever perform again. Neil claims he's now 90 to 95% recovered, though he admits there are still things he can't do on stage and running back and forth during performances remains difficult. The stroke forced Mötley Crüe to postpone their Las Vegas residency and cancel a festival headline slot, but Neil's vocal problems started long before the strokes. His May 29th, 2021 performance at an Iowa festival became infamous when his voice gave out just 14 songs into the set. He told the crowd his voice was gone and walked off mid-song while his confused band awkwardly kept playing. A front row fan called it the worst performance ever and said there was no way Neil could handle a stadium tour. By August 2024, only 8,769 fans showed up to the Minnesota State Fair compared to 42,212 at a stadium show 2 years earlier. The critic covering it described Neil's voice as a primal squeal rather than a primal scream, noting he skipped lots of lyrics and kept pointing his microphone at the crowd trying to make them do his work. Then there's the backing track controversy. When ousted guitarist Mick Mars filed his lawsuit in 2023, he claimed a significant portion of Neil's vocals were pre-recorded during tours, and video evidence showing vocal lines continuing while Neil's microphone wasn't near his face spread across the internet. Neil denies it happened, but the damage to his credibility was done, and what happened with the next singer would spark an even bigger debate about elder abuse. Number 11, Frankie Valli, 90 years old and accused of elder abuse.
You're just too true. Can't take my
Frankie Valli turned 90 in May 2024 and is still touring through at least April 2026 on what he's calling his Last Encore's farewell tour. Viral TikTok videos from his shows have racked up over 4.1 million views. But they're not celebrating his longevity. They're expressing alarm. Footage from an August 2024 show at Mountain Winery in California captured Valli appearing frail, struggling to climb stairs, and most damning of all, his lips clearly not matching the pristine falsetto pouring out of the speakers. During one performance, his microphone was held far below his mouth while the vocal track of a song played flawlessly. The video sparked an explosion of outrage, with one tweet viewed over 2 million times declaring that whoever keeps sending Frankie Valli out on stage at this point is committing elder abuse. Fellow musicians weighed in publicly. Graham Nash told reporters that Valli is just lip-syncing badly to a tape and that as a musician, if you're not singing, you shouldn't be on stage. Ann Wilson of Heart agreed, saying that's the moment when you have to decide whether to walk off stage or not. Valli's response in October 2024 was defiant, insisting nobody has ever made him do anything he didn't want to do, and that he gets a chuckle from comments wondering if someone's forcing him to perform. He explained the Four Seasons sound was always about layering vocals and instruments, using 60 years of experience to sound like the records. Behind the scenes, Valli's personal life has been turbulent. His son Emilio filed a restraining order against brother Francesco in April 2024 after alleged threats, with the family believing Francesco is addicted to opiates. Despite the controversy, Valli received a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award in February 2025, his first Grammy ever after 5 prior nominations. If the entire music community is debating whether putting a 90-year-old on stage constitutes abuse, then something's gone terribly wrong with how we define farewell tours. Number 10, Roger Waters. When the message matters more than the music. Roger Waters is standing proof that sometimes a performer values the platform more than the actual performance holding it up. He's in his 80s now, and while he's still staging massive, politically charged productions with all the visual spectacle fans expect from a former Pink Floyd member, the man at the center increasingly looks and sounds removed from the force he once was. Fans who come hoping for even a shadow of Pink Floyd often leave wondering why the actual music took a back seat to monologues, political messaging, and long stretches of spoken word delivery. Waters' voice, which once carried albums like The Wall and Animals with Devastating Power, now wavers and strains and sometimes gets completely swallowed by the band playing behind him. For some audiences, Waters remains a visionary using his platform for causes that matter. For others, it feels like he's holding on because having the stage and the microphone matters more to him than whether he can actually deliver a performance worthy of the ticket price. That's exactly when a legend should consider stepping aside, before the message completely smothers the music and before audiences start wishing they just stayed home and played the classic albums instead. The next singer made a very different choice about stepping aside. Number 9, James Taylor. When comfort becomes fragility.
And you need some love and care.
James Taylor's voice used to feel like comfort itself, soft and warm and impossibly smooth on songs that became the soundtrack for an entire generation. He's well into his 70s now, and you can hear every single year of it when he performs. The once smooth vocals come out thin and shaky, sometimes barely rising above a whisper. Fans who grew up with songs like Fire and Rain and Carolina in My Mind often describe recent concerts as sweet but fragile, and some say it feels like he's holding on more out of routine than genuine passion. His stage presence remains kind and humble. That part of James Taylor has never changed, but the performances simply don't carry the emotional weight they once did. He's given the world decades of beauty, created a catalog that defined folk rock for millions of people. And there's absolutely no shame in stepping back now before the softness turns to silence. Every show at this point feels like watching someone trying desperately to preserve something that's already slipping away. And while Taylor's too gracious to admit it out loud, audiences can feel it in every strained note. If even the gentlest voice in music is starting to crack, then what does that say about everyone else who's trying to push through with far less grace? Number 8, Neil Diamond, the Parkinson's patient who might return for one last ride.
There wasn't nothing but a heartache.
Neil Diamond walked away from touring in 2018 after his Parkinson's diagnosis, quietly closing the curtain on decades of electrifying performances that made songs like Sweet Caroline cultural institutions. That should have been the end. A dignified exit from a living legend who'd given everything. Then rumors started swirling in 2026 about a possible One Last Ride tour. And suddenly fans were torn between excitement and absolute dread. On one hand, who wouldn't want one final chance to hear that voice live? One more standing ovation for an icon whose music meant so much to so many. On the other hand, Diamond walked away for a reason. Parkinson's is incurable and progressive, and bringing him back years later, especially decades into the disease's advancement, doesn't just risk disappointment. It risks a painful final chapter that could tarnish what was otherwise a perfect goodbye. Sometimes the greatest tribute to a legend isn't another tour, but letting them exit while people still remember how precious and powerful they were. Diamond doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. And if this rumored comeback actually happens, it might be the one decision that damages an otherwise flawless legacy. If watching someone slowly decline on stage becomes the lasting memory instead of their greatest hits, then who really benefits from that final tour? Number 7. Rod Stewart. 2 cancers and still insisting he'll never stop.
I can tell by your eyes that you...
Rod Stewart survived thyroid cancer, beat prostate cancer, and at 79 was still trying to push through his One Last Time tour before repeated illness forced multiple cancellations. He's declared on social media that he'll never retire, insisting he was put on this earth to be a singer and boasting about his full head of hair and fitness level, like that somehow proves his body isn't breaking down. It's classic Rod. Charming, defiant, and maybe a little unrealistic. Fans can hear the strain in every performance, see the exhaustion in his movements, and count the growing number of shows that get scrapped because sickness keeps interrupting his plans. He's promised no more world tours, but absolutely refuses to use the word retirement, as if changing the terminology changes the reality that he's an 80-year-old double cancer survivor whose body keeps trying to force him to slow down. Passion might have carried Rod Stewart through 5 decades of rock and soul, but passion alone can't fix what cancer and age have already done. At some point, even legends have to confront what their bodies are screaming at them. And Rod's body has been screaming for years now. But the next artist actually listened to what his body was telling him. Number 6. Alan Jackson, the only one who got it right.
Remember when...
Alan Jackson made the smart call, and his story stands as proof that knowing when to stop is just as important as knowing when to start. The country legend officially retired from touring on May 17, 2025 in Milwaukee, ending his last call, one more for the road tour with his dignity and legacy completely intact. Jackson's been battling Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease for over a decade, a degenerative nerve condition that attacks muscles and balance, making it progressively harder to walk and stand. He went public with the diagnosis in 2021, but he'd known for years before that. And by the time he announced his farewell tour, fans could see him struggling. At 66, Jackson didn't wait until his body completely gave out, or until he couldn't hit notes anymore. He planned a proper goodbye, raised over $2.25 million for CMT research during the tour, and even made a surprise wheelchair appearance at Luke Combs' World Tour 2025 to perform one final time. That's how you exit, on your own terms, with your legacy intact, before anyone has to watch you deteriorate on stage. Jackson understood something other legends seem to have forgotten. The final bow is just as important as the first note, and there's profound dignity in choosing your own ending instead of letting your body choose it for you. If Alan Jackson could make the call at 66 while still capable of performing, then why can't anyone else? Number 5. Willie Nelson, 91 years old and still refusing to slow down. Willie Nelson turned 91 and somehow hasn't gotten the memo that most people his age aren't headlining multi-date festival tours. He missed the first 7 shows of his 2024 Outlaw Music Festival tour after doctors literally ordered him off the road, though he came back triumphantly on July 4th for his annual picnic. Nelson's managing emphysema now. He's stopped smoking and switched to edibles. And he's battled pneumonia multiple times over the years. He told reporters in November 2024 that he doesn't feel bad and doesn't hurt anywhere, which sounds reassuring until you remember he also just released his 153rd album and is planning another full festival run starting May 2025. Willie's a living monument to country music, absolutely, and nobody wants to be the person saying he should stop. But at 91, every single tour feels like it's playing with fire. His voice these days sounds thin and worn. Nothing like the warm baritone that made On the Road Again an anthem. And fans who see him live describe a performer who looks exhausted before the first chorus even lands. Willie's given the world more than anyone had a right to expect, released more albums than some artists have songs, and inspired generations of musicians. If Willie collapses on stage one night, we'll all wish someone had convinced him to bow out while he could still walk off under his own power. If 91 isn't old enough to justify
treat you quite as good as I could.
Retirement, then what age would ever be enough? Number 4, Bruce Springsteen, the boss who feared he'd never sing again. Bruce Springsteen terrified his own fans when he started canceling shows in late 2023. First for peptic ulcer disease, then again in May 2024, for vocal issues that forced him to skip major European cities. On SiriusXM, he finally revealed just how scared he'd actually been, admitting his diaphragm hurt so badly that trying to sing felt like it was killing him. And for the first time in his entire life, he genuinely feared he might never sing again. This is Bruce Springsteen we're talking about, the guy who regularly plays 3.5-hour marathons and makes it look effortless, who's built a reputation on outlasting every other performer in rock. He's 75 now, and while he recovered enough to finish his 2024 US dates and even gross nearly $730 million on his 2023 to 2025 tour, the cracks are impossible to ignore. His European Land of Hope and Dreams tour runs through July 2025, but every single cancellation reminds fans that even the boss has limits. The question isn't whether Springsteen can still deliver. He proved he can. It's whether he should keep testing those limits when his body's already sent multiple warning signs that something's seriously wrong. If even Bruce Springsteen admitted genuine fear about losing his voice forever,
I said this train.
then how close to the edge is he really performing? Number 3, Jon Bon Jovi. 3 years of denial before admitting his voice was broken. Jon Bon Jovi spent 3 years living in absolute denial before he finally admitted what everyone could already hear. His voice was complete
7,800 Fahrenheit down on Spring Garden Street.
Wrecked. Reviews during the 2022 tour were brutal and unforgiving. Critics called his vocals shockingly poor and said that he was butchering not just the classics everyone came to hear, but even fresh material from new albums. Turns out one of his vocal cords had completely atrophied, with doctors describing one cord thick as a thumb while the other had shrunk thin as a pinky. He needed medialization surgery in 2022, getting a plastic implant to help the cords meet properly, then spent years in intensive vocal rehab while fans wondered if Jon Bon Jovi would ever truly come back. His own wife told him after a Nashville show that it wasn't good, which had to be devastating coming from someone who loved him. Bon Jovi's exact words about that period were, "My voice was broken," and he admitted that while he could still work a crowd and make them do whatever he wanted, because he's Jon Bon Jovi and he knows all the tricks, the foundation supporting it all was gone. He announced a 2026 Forever Tour in October 2025, claiming he can confidently handle 2.5 hours night after night now. But after 3 years of documented struggle and that level of vocal damage, you have to wonder if he's genuinely healed or just really good at convincing himself. sometimes the kindest thing a legend can do is preserve what's left rather than risk another very public collapse that gets documented and shared across the internet forever. Number 2. Billy Joel, the brain condition that stopped the Piano Man. Billy Joel kept Manhattan absolutely spellbound for years with his Madison Square Garden residency, playing to packed houses month after month like some kind of indestructible showman. He even dropped his first new song in 30 years during his 100th MSG show in
Time for forgiveness. Won't you tell?
March 2024. A moment that felt like pure triumph and vindication. Then came May 2025, when Joel revealed he'd been diagnosed with normal pressure hydrocephalus, a brain condition where excess cerebrospinal fluid builds up, messing with hearing, vision, and balance. His doctors didn't suggest he take time off. They demanded it, canceling every single concert through July 2026. Joel's tried to calm everyone down, insisting he feels fine and nobody should worry about him being deathly ill. But NP isn't something you just push through with determination and coffee. His final performance was February 22nd, 2025 at Mohegan Sun Arena. And while there's talk of potential shunt surgery that might help manage the condition, nobody actually knows if the Piano Man will ever tour again. The crowd at that last show had absolutely no idea they might have been witnessing the end of an era. But what
Me a smile, 'cause he knows that it's me, David.
What stopped Billy Joel's career doesn't compare to what ended the career at number 1. Number 1, Steven Tyler, the fractured larynx that ended Aerosmith forever. Steven Tyler's voice used to cut through arenas like a razor, that raw primal scream that defined Aerosmith for 50 years and made songs like Dream On, Immortal achievements in rock history. But in September 2023, something happened that no amount of swagger, determination, or rock and roll attitude could fix. During what was supposed to be Aerosmith's farewell tour, Tyler fractured his larynx and damaged his vocal cords so severely that doctors eventually delivered the verdict every singer dreads. Full recovery simply isn't possible. The band made it official in August 2024, announcing they were retiring from touring permanently because Steven's voice, that one-of-a-kind instrument that launched 1,000 imitators, was broken beyond any hope of repair. His last concert was September 9th, 2023, at UBS Arena in New York, and nobody in that crowd knew they were watching history's final note. Medical teams tried everything for months, brought in the best specialists money could buy, but a fractured larynx in your mid-70s doesn't heal the way it might have at 30. The band's statement said it plainly. Steven's voice is an instrument like no other, and sadly, it's clear that full recovery from his vocal injury isn't possible. If there was ever a definitive case study in why aging rockers need to know when their bodies are telling them to stop, Steven Tyler's injury is it. The fact that one of rock's most powerful voices can be silenced forever by a single injury proves that nobody's invincible, no matter how many decades they've spent defying expectations. These 15 singers represent something profound about aging, legacy, and the brutal reality of time. Steven Tyler can never sing again. Billy Joel's brain won't let him perform. Alan Jackson made the wise choice. The others are still fighting battles their bodies might not let them win. Their legacies are already secure, carved in stone by decades of hits that shape generations. But every night they push past their limits, they risk turning triumph into tragedy and making the decline the story instead of the music. What do you think? Did we get the order right, or should someone else have taken the number 1 spot? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into rock history's most controversial moments.